Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. Now, before we get started in today's session that I'm really excited about, I'll share with you that if you stick around to the end, I'll offer, like we always do, complimentary access to a program that we've built that's like nothing else that I've ever seen. Until then, I'm excited to introduce a dear friend of mine, David Bates. David and I have known one another for several years now. We're very excited about the partnership that we get to have again this year. We've been partners for several years on the Live to Lead Harrisonburg experience that Cindy and I have hosted, but this year specifically on the Leadership Legacy experience on June 13th. So whenever you're accessing this, either before, after, during, whatever that may be, I'm excited for you to learn more about David and his dad, Robert, and what they do through Alcova Mortgage, specifically in Harrisonburg, but also in the Smith Mountain Lake area. Just amazing people, and they do some really cool stuff. So with that said, David, why don't you start by sharing just a brief overview of your professional background and really some of your experience specific to the industry that you're in?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I'm really excited again. So for my professional background, I started in mortgage lending in 2016 after I graduated from Bridgewater College. Since then, I've been a top 100 loan officer in my company since 2018. I was actually a Scotsman Guide top originator from 2021. And I actually got my certified mortgage advisor CMA designation back in 2020. So a lot of folks claim to be mortgage advisors, and they actually legally are not. So I am one of the few that actually can say that, and it's been a great career so far.
That's awesome. I often say that there's a wild difference between somebody being certified and somebody truly being qualified. And in a lot of cases, somebody can buy the stamp, but you've lived it. You've gotten a lot of the credentials. You've gotten a ton of experience. I've loved the interaction with your dad. He's mentored you heavily on what you guys do. It's just really cool. So there's a high degree of professionalism and expertise that you bring to the table, even though you're 30 or so years old, right? And it's really cool.
Yeah, now, 31, but who's counting?
Yeah, it's all downhill now. So, David, I'm going to ask this next question and really tee it up. So let's be honest, any given day, most of us that have accepted business ownership responsibility, leadership of responsibility of any kind, it would often be easier to just get a stinking job. And in some cases, it might actually pay more to just get a stinking job. What was it for you? What was that clear purpose for you that you told your dad, Robert, you said, hey, I'm willing to accept some of that responsibility. I'm willing to step up and help you run the business.
Yeah, wow. That's a great question. It's probably a number of things, and it might be somewhat genetic. You keep mentioning my dad, Robert. He's been in a leadership role in his career for at least as long as I've been alive, but I'm sure longer than that. He's actually started in banking management and transitioned to the mortgage world. And I think a lot of that, and my mom actually is a self-employed piano teacher, was a CPA, I guess still has her CPA license, but I think it's just kind of in our blood, maybe, for the entrepreneurship lifestyle. So I grew up being in leadership roles. I was a lifeguard student supervisor at Bridgewater College as a freshman, which had never happened before. I met my wife at Camp Overlook as the outdoor adventure director while she was the day camp director. So both of us were in leadership roles there. And when I started working with Dad, so actually before I started working with Dad, I thought I was going to go to the Marine Corps. I don't know if we discussed this or not. So actually, I went to officer candidate school for the Marine Corps. I had a flight contract. I ended up not commissioning. I didn't actually finish OCS because I got tendonitis in both knees. So I had to drop for medical reasons. But I was, expecting to go into a leadership role there with the military and did not. So when I started with Dad, after a couple years of basically figuring out how to actually do the job and work in the industry, I ended up becoming sales manager for our small branch, and then I became co-branch partner in 2022. So
very cool. Now, this isn't on the script. It's not on the list of questions that we talked about going through, but I'm going to ask it anyway because you baited me right there a little bit. I've really enjoyed getting to know your dad, and I often define the idea of leadership. It's not about a title. It's not about a position. It's really about the act of service. It's how we help the people around us specifically, talk about some of the things that you've watched your dad while you're growing up, and even still today, where and this will come back to Alcova shortly with one of the questions.
Okay.
With what he's done with law enforcement, military, first responders, and just the way he looks for, hey, how can I support the people that take care of us?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, basically in any position I have ever seen him in, even at church, he would volunteer, and he was head usher. He just, anytime there was something that needed a volunteer or something that was within his comfort, not even his comfortable wheelhouse doing, really just anything that needed to be done, he would step up and do it. So I think that was kind of my example growing up, was seeing him step into these roles that he may or may not have wanted, but doing it because it needed to be done. So yeah, he volunteered after 2001. He became a auxiliary police officer with Harrisonburg Police Department. He did that for, I think, 7 or 8 years, and then when he physically could no longer do that anymore because his knees were going bad, he actually ended up running the police foundation after that. So he was always doing something somewhere, and it's the same. That's the same with working with him. He's always, we have quote unquote employees, but we call them all coworkers. We're like a family. We work together, and it's always, hey, how can I bring this person up a level? Not, hey, let me tell them what to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's the difference. I often hear people talk about, hey, I'm not willing to ask somebody to do something I won't do myself. But the reality is, sometimes in a leadership role, there's certain things we can't get always bogged down in the things that they can and should be doing. But what I've heard your dad say is, I'm looking for the things that they can't do for themselves, but if I do it, it helps them be able to do it for themselves moving forward. And I just love seeing that from him. And so
yeah.
Thanks for humoring the curveball and let me get off script a little bit there.
No problem.
The next one that we've kind of got scripted is you guys have been willing to partner with us on the Live to Lead Harrisonburg event the last several years. And now specifically with this Leadership Legacy event, it's a whole different venue, it's a whole different theme and so on. Why was that? Why were you willing to say, yeah, we'll get involved?
Yeah. So we honestly, I knew who you were prior to our actually meeting. I think we were friends, or we were connected on LinkedIn. So I saw a lot of your stuff. I had an idea of who you were. And then, of course, we actually met through Freemasons when I joined that a few years ago. And, of course, you had, I guess, joined maybe a year or so previous than I had. And so we met through that, became friends. And then, after talking and getting to know you better, I finally realized, hey, here's what he's actually doing. This seems really cool. And then, of course, we sat down with Dad. We broke bread a few times, and from there, it was just a no-brainer of, hey, this is everything that you do is something that we think is great for the community, and it's something that we enjoy being involved in. So,
well, and I appreciate all that, David. I mean, we're really intentional when we use the word partnership. We don't call anything we do sponsorships. We want to make sure it's a true cohesive partnership relationship. We want it to be a win-win, and we just love the interaction we have with you guys. So thank you for that. So tell me now, what would you really like for the community? There's a lot of places people can go for mortgages. There's a lot of places people can go for financial services and so on. But you really specialize in the value you add and the resources that you provide. What would you like the community to know about what you guys do at Alcova Mortgage, specifically in the offices that you and your dad are responsible for?
Yeah, so we've got a Harrisonburg office, here locally, and we ended up taking over a branch in Hardy, Virginia, near Roanoke at Smith Mountain Lake. And for the most part, it doesn't matter what Alcova branch you're talking to. Everyone at this company is aligned on vision and goals, and I think we're all inspired by our Alcova owners. So there's 3 owners. We've got Bobby, Billy, and Robbie, or Rob rather. Don't tell them I said Robbie. And they, from the get-go, they realized, hey, this mortgage process needs to be simpler. This is not something that normal people understand. It's a complicated process, and quite honestly, a lot of the industry makes it way worse than it needs to be. So I won't go through all the history of prior companies where Dad has been or where I was with him, but it was so refreshing to see basically someone say, hey, the client experience is the most important to us. So I could go into how we've got the great products, we've got great rates and all that, but I think the customer service and experience by not having to panic and worry of, hey, is my loan going to close or not? Am I actually going to be able to buy this house? That, I think, comes down to the number one priority for us. So, we've got that's kind of the whole company alignment and vision. We've got, core values, which, maybe I'll go into later, but I don't want to bore people with that. But it's the entire company is just structured to help people and simplify the process. And basically we're gonna make it as easy as possible, and we're gonna try not to ask you for anything we don't need. Whereas other people might over document whatever else and ask for things that maybe not be necessary.
David, I love that you share that, because I mean, the majority of the relationships that Cindy and I have today, be it personal relationships, business relationships, and the two go together. I mean, you can't separate them when you run your own business, right? They're based on, we do business with people we know, like, and trust being one of the key things. But specifically, it's not always about price. Price is a factor, but it's not the factor. There's relationships, that trust, that the service and the compassion, the expertise is there, is critical. And I love that you guys produce that. Now,
yeah, really, really quick, let me just add to that. The one thing I always say is, if you want the Walmart of mortgage lenders for the absolute cheapest option, you can find that, but it's not going to be us. It's going to be someone online offering you, a product and a rate that probably doesn't exist. And when the whole thing crashes and burns, was it really worth it? But yeah.
yeah. So I tell people often, we do some specific work, and some of it's not the least expensive you can find, but I guarantee you the return on investment's there when we do that work. And I often say, hey, sometimes free is the most expensive thing you ever get. Yep. And sometimes that bargain will burn your tail. I cleaned it up right there. I didn't swear. Did you like that?
That was great.
Now, share a little bit specific to the community. There's one unique thing that Alcova does corporately that we've been able to be involved with together, but I've had some neat experience with myself. Talk about that. Where I'm leading you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So our hero, we do a hero reward program as a company, where we recognize a local hero every month. And it's not necessarily a client or even a business partner, anyone we've worked with, but it is literally just a, hey, thank you for being someone who is a pillar in the community still, after having given, however many years of service they may have given in the military. So we try to find someone who's, had some sort of military experience and is still doing, something in the community. So if you want to talk about, the one particular award we did together, I'll let you mention that, since you were the submitter.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to, but there's been a few others that I've submitted as well, who's received, one of which isn't even in the area. So,
right. One was over in Richmond. Yeah. So
that's right. And I thought it was such a cool award, because you're doing that. It's not necessarily a client. We've not had a mortgage we've lived in our home for 25 years. So
right.
We've not done that, but we got to submit. One of the folks that we submitted is a close friend. He's going to be one of the panelists at the June 13th Leadership Legacy event. A guy named Philip Reed. He's the chief of police in Bridgewater. Your dad interacted with him through when he was part of the foundation for Harrisonburg, when he was on the auxiliary for Harrisonburg. Matter of fact, when Philip first started in Harrisonburg, your dad was one of the auxiliary guys. He shared that story. Yeah. But Philip is an absolute rock star. So maybe, is there anything else you want to say in and around that?
Well, I was just say he is, and basically, so for background for anyone who hadn't heard the story yet, Wes submitted an application on behalf of Phil, and basically outlined this wonderful, I don't know, couple paragraphs of the whole history there, which I won't go into all the detail. I don't remember off the top of my head, but bottom line, he's an awesome guy, still doing phenomenal work in the community, and so the award is we give a flat $500 and say thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And it's a small token of appreciation, of a way for us to give back to the communities where we live and serve and have branches and work, just to try and make it a better place.
Yeah, there was another gentleman that I'm close friends with, and you know him as well, that he actually declined. He didn't feel comfortable accepting because the role he's in now. But one of my lifelong mentors, a guy named Terry Ward, that I've written about in both of the books that I've written to date. I think I've even got him included pretty heavily because he's been so important in my life in the new book that I'm working on now. So you won't escape talking about values because that's the new book too. But yeah, Terry was awarded that in Richmond, and he reaches out to me. I'm leaving Martinsburg, West Virginia. We were with some clients up there, and I got that random text message saying, "Who is this? Is this a scam, West?" And I'm like, no, Terry, I submitted you. It's legit. So it was pretty humbling to see. So thank you guys for doing what you do. So
Hey, absolutely.
that kind of leads to the next question, David, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Talk about a recent successful project or maybe a campaign that you guys have spearheaded and the impact that it's had on the community.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing that comes to mind is when the hurricane actually came through North Carolina last year and was pretty devastating in certain parts of Western North Carolina. We had several branch offices down there. Every single loan officer, branch partner was out, boots on the ground, trying to help anyone and everyone they could. With the immediate trauma stuff, but also with supplies and everything else afterwards. And actually our owner, Bobby, was down there with them hand in hand, because he said, "Hey, this is where I am needed right now. I don't need to be at corporate telling people what to do." He was out there with them, in the trenches, pulling water out of places, helping barricade others, and get people to safety, hand out food supplies. It was just seeing, I wasn't a part of it, but seeing all of those folks pull together like that was just truly humbling, and that's what kind of reinforces when you see that. You're like, wow, I really am working for a phenomenal company.
Well, and that ties right into the next question I've got is, tell us about the purpose of the organization and how it aligns with your own values and purpose. And you did, but elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah. So I talked about simplifying the mortgage process, but the core values that we have with Alcova are courage, agility, sincerity, and tenacity. So agility, kind of right there where Bobby switched gears and said, "Hey, I don't need to be in my corporate office. I need to be boots on the ground and helping these people." That's really agility and courage right there, because not everyone is going to want to be out there doing dangerous work. Sincerity, tenacity, both with the company and ourselves, even just in this industry. Tenacity, I think, is the one that sticks out to me the most, because mortgages aren't easy, regardless of what a lot of people might think. You're sitting at a desk. Oh, it's a cush banking job. You come in, on the hours you want to, you name it. But there's a lot of stuff that happens, and the amount of calls you get after hours, weekends, and then you'll bust your butt for 2 weeks trying to help someone, and then they go somewhere else for to save $5 a month on the rate, and it's like, ugh, here we go again. It's having experienced that in other companies and then experience it here, it's like, you know what, I know I'm doing the absolute best I can for everyone I can, and if I can help more people, great, and if they choose to go elsewhere, that's okay. But that those 4 core values, I think, are pertinent both with the company and myself, not just in mortgage lending, but also how we live our lives day to day.
Yeah, David, I love that you explained the values. You didn't just list what they were, and that's something. And even your explanation of Bobby and when he went to North Carolina. That's, as I just finished up one of the chapters in the new book I'll have coming out in about a year on values, on the importance of values being in the foundation of every business. I talk about how in leadership roles, we better be exemplifying them and explaining them over and over and over. We can't let people not hear us doing it, because they'll come up with their own if we're not. And just as importantly, we better look for ways to show our team members, here's what that value looks like in your role, not just in mine, because we've all got different roles. So
yeah. And I'll elaborate on that one a little bit further. Every single person that Dad has ever hired since he's been at a mortgage company, including myself, he's got 3 rules rather for every employee. 2 of them are funny. One of them is absolutely true. So the first 2 rules are, if I ask for a Coke, you better get me a Coke, not a Pepsi. The toilet paper rolls over, not under. But the third rule and the important one is the client always comes first. You always do what is best for the client. So if we're in a situation where, hey, we've got to get something done and, we mess something up, you name it, whatever it is, we're going to make it right, and we are going to make sure the client is getting what is in their best interest. If we have to decline a loan to save someone from buying a house that's about to fall down that the, other parties in the transaction are trying to force you through, we're going to find a way to decline that loan and save that person, because we have to do what's best for them. So,
and hey, money can be made a lot of different ways, but there's not many ways that you can earn that character and that trust with people. And that's important. This is a blast. I'm really enjoying this. Now, being a relatively recent 31-year-old, talk about, so you're approaching that older status, right? I've got more gray hair now, so I can do it from a different side of the fence. But what kind of advice would you give somebody that's newer in their career, in their early to mid 20s, that are looking to advance, they're looking for leadership opportunities, they want to become that successful leader long term? What would you say? Here's what I've gone through. Here's some things that might save you some steps.
Yeah. Gosh, I probably have a ton. I won't ramble, but I think number one is just jump in and do it. Anytime you get an opportunity, try and say yes. I mean, that was one of the things I did in my 20s and I'm on probably way too many boards that I care to be at the moment, but say yes, get uncomfortable. And you'll learn, I learn at least better from actually doing it. So when you're put in those positions, when you have to make those decisions and you see it from a different perspective, you're going to naturally learn and grow from it. So that would probably be one of my big tips. And then aside from that, educate yourself. So if your company offers training, if you can partner with Wes and Cindy on some of their events and grow in leadership that way, read books. I probably shouldn't say this, but I tell a lot of people, I learned more after college just by reading business books, leadership books, and everything else than I ever learned in any course that I took through my 4 years of college. So educate yourself, whatever that means to you, whether it's podcasts, books, partnering with someone like Dove Development and Consulting. I mean, that is how you improve. And then just after that, jump in and do it.
Yeah. Hey, David, if I'm being honest, in my corporate career, between large manufacturing, small business, and so on, I think 25, 30 years in the workforce in that, I don't think I was ever qualified for a position that I applied for or received. I always had less than they were asking for those required things. But it was, gosh, I'm going to learn to swim at the deep end of the pool. I'm able to do it until you tell me I can't do it. And even then, I'm going to fight and scrap and get there and figure it out along the way.
I think at some point, everyone, especially leaders, all experience some sort of imposter syndrome. So, one of the other things you could do is, hey, dress and act the part. I mean, you may not be there yet, but when I first started, I wore a suit and tie every single day, whether I had a client meeting or not. A couple of years in, it was suit and tie when I've got client meetings or closings. And now it's like, all right, I'll do the blazer and the polo thing. But once in a while, I'll still throw on the suit and tie and remind myself, hey, this is the level I'm holding myself to, and dress and act the part.
Yeah, and there's a degree of self-image that comes with that confidence, and all those matter. That impacts our performance and what we do and how we serve the people. If it's, we did a session, I don't know, it's probably been 8-9 years ago now, and it was really about communication techniques, and it was a lot based on John Maxwell's book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, and one of the folks in that group kept asking, what would keep somebody from applying these things to manipulate other people? And finally, David, I just got pissed, and I was tired of hearing that same question over and over and over. And I said, hey, the only thing that I know that keeps someone from being manipulative is don't freaking be manipulative.
Yeah, be a good person. Simple as that.
That's 100%. And Cindy, that was one of the places that I always say, hey, if you're so inclined, pray for Cindy because she needs it. She puts up with my nonsense all the time. And she just kind of shrunk, as in saying, holy shit, here we go again. Because I'd had enough. I never considered it from that perspective. I considered it from the perspective of how do I do the right thing for the people we're interacting with, not how do I use it for ill will.
Right.
So anyway, Anything else you would like to share? I've loved this. I truly appreciate the time. Is there anything else you would like to share about yourself, Alcova Mortgage, anything that could be a blessing to other folks that might catch this?
Honestly, I don't know. I would say just listen to the whole podcast. Do yourself a favor, because and honestly, not just this one. I'm not saying just my podcast, but there's going to be a big group of these coming out. I would 100% encourage you to listen to every single one of them and attend this event, because I know it's going to be an awesome event.
Yeah, part of this sequence is we are working to do this with all of our partners for the event, all the panelists, because it's going to be a cool event that we're doing in Harrisonburg, unlike anything we've ever seen in Virginia that I'm aware of. But the reality is the whole podcast, and that's what I'll close with, is we've had this in place for more than a year as we record this, and it's really been built to be that guide, because in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell talks about this law of process, and he said leadership's not developed, it's developed daily, not in a day. There's no such thing as a one-time event, a one-time lesson that really makes or breaks you as a leader. It's the process that you go through continually, and that's why we made the podcast, but it's really based on a program Cindy and I started in late 2018, and that's where I'll make the offer as we close this. We have a program today that's called Leading at the Next Level. It's a complete program. Today, we do typically 2 new live lessons each month. We share those virtually, and then we add the recordings to a digital product where we've got over 160 hours worth of content that Cindy and I have developed through real world experience, through our licensing, through the companies we work with, through the mentorship that we get access to, and so on, all of which that's approved for continuing education credit through the Society for Human Resource Management, the Human Resource Certification Institute, and so on. What I'll do is say, if you send me an email at admin@dove-development.net, I'll hook you up with a 45-day all access trial that gives you access to join the live calls, the digital stuff, all the continuing education, no cost, and then a pretty substantial discount if you choose to maintain that moving forward. So anyway, with that said, David, thanks for being with us. I'm thrilled that you guys are willing to partner with us on the event again. Appreciate your friendship, and anything else you'd like to say?
No, thank you for having me. This has been a blast, and I hope I can get you to return the favor when I get my my own podcast up and running.
Anytime you want. Happy to help you in the process, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Have a great day, guys. God bless.